After 60, the body does not fail in dramatic ways. It communicates quietly, through signals that are easy to ignore if we are not listening. A slight stiffness when getting out of bed, a subtle loss of balance when turning too quickly, a feeling that the legs need a moment before they fully cooperate. From a scientific perspective, these are not signs of decline but evidence of changing neural communication. Muscle strength does not disappear first. What fades initially is the clarity of the signal between the brain and the body. Nerve conduction slows, sensory receptors in the feet become less responsive, and the brain receives less accurate information about where the body is in space. This is why controlled walking becomes such a powerful daily exercise for men over 60. Walking, when done with awareness, is far more than movement. It is a neurological training session disguised as a simple habit. Every step activates mechanoreceptors in the soles of the feet, sending information upward through the spinal cord into balance centers of the brain. When posture is upright and deliberate, the spine aligns in a way that optimizes blood flow to the brainstem and cerebellum, regions responsible for coordination and stability. Research in aging physiology shows that men who walk with conscious posture retain better reaction times and spatial awareness, not because they walk farther, but because they walk attentively. Speed is not the goal here. In fact, slower walking often produces deeper benefits. Moving slowly forces the nervous system to stay engaged. The brain must constantly adjust micro-movements in the ankles, knees, and hips to maintain balance. This continuous adjustment strengthens neural pathways that would otherwise weaken from disuse. It is similar to learning a musical instrument later in life. The brain responds not to force, but to focus. Each step becomes a rehearsal for stability, teaching the body how to remain upright in a world that no longer forgives careless movement. There is also a cardiovascular dimension that is often misunderstood. Gentle, rhythmic walking improves circulation without triggering stress responses. As muscles contract and relax, they act as pumps, assisting venous blood return to the heart. This reduces strain on the cardiovascular system while improving oxygen delivery to tissues. Over time, this supports mitochondrial function, the energy-producing structures inside cells that naturally decline with age. The body becomes more efficient not by pushing harder, but by moving smarter. Posture plays a critical role in this process. Many men over 60 unknowingly adopt a forward-leaning stance, compressing the chest and restricting breathing. Conscious walking encourages spinal extension, opening the rib cage and allowing the lungs to expand fully. This improves oxygen uptake and subtly lowers resting heart rate. Neurologically, an upright posture sends signals of safety and confidence to the brain, reducing unnecessary activation of stress hormones. The body interprets posture as information, adjusting internal chemistry accordingly. Walking also restores trust between the mind and the body. Fear of falling is common with age, and fear alters movement patterns. When men walk cautiously without awareness, they often stiffen, paradoxically increasing instability. Intentional walking reverses this cycle. The brain learns, through repeated calm movement, that balance is still reliable. This reduces protective tension in the muscles and allows movement to become fluid again. Scientific studies on motor learning confirm that confidence is not psychological alone, it is encoded through repeated successful movement experiences. Over time, this daily practice reshapes how the body responds to the environment. Curbs, stairs, uneven ground become manageable again because the nervous system is trained, not rushed. Walking with awareness becomes a form of preventive medicine, protecting joints by distributing forces evenly and preserving cartilage through gentle compression and release. The body remains adaptable, responsive, and engaged, not because it is young, but because it is consistently reminded how to move with intelligence and respect for its own design. The simple act of sitting down and standing up may appear ordinary, but biologically it is one of the most revealing movements the human body performs. For men over 60, this motion quietly determines independence, confidence, and metabolic health. Science shows that the ability to rise from a seated position without strain is closely linked to longevity, not because it measures strength alone, but because it reflects how well muscles, joints, nerves, and balance systems are working together. When this movement becomes difficult, it is rarely due to age itself. It is more often the result of disuse and hesitation that slowly teach the body to forget its own capability. Chair-supported squats or controlled sit-to-stand movements reawaken this fundamental pattern. They engage the large muscle groups of the legs and hips, particularly the quadriceps, gluteal muscles, and deep stabilizers around the pelvis. These muscles are not just for movement, they are metabolic engines. Muscle tissue plays a critical role in regulating blood sugar, absorbing glucose from the bloodstream and reducing the burden on insulin. As men age and muscle mass declines, insulin sensitivity often worsens, increasing the risk of metabolic disease. Gentle daily loading of these muscles reverses that trend, signaling the body to maintain muscle tissue because it is still required. The nervous system also responds powerfully to this movement. Standing up from a chair requires precise timing between muscle activation and joint positioning. The brain must calculate how much force is needed, where the center of gravity should shift, and how to stabilize the spine during the transition. When this movement is done slowly and deliberately, neural pathways sharpen. This is why speed is unnecessary and often counterproductive. Slow repetitions allow the brain to refine coordination, reducing compensatory patterns that place stress on the knees or lower back. Over time, this improves movement efficiency and reduces joint discomfort without aggressive exercise. Bone health is another silent beneficiary of this practice. Bones are living tissue that respond to mechanical signals. Without regular loading, they receive the message that strength is no longer needed, leading to gradual loss of density. Sit-to-stand movements apply gentle, natural pressure through the hips and legs, stimulating bone-forming cells without the risks associated with heavy impact. This is especially important for men who avoid exercise out of fear of injury. The body does not need extremes to remain strong, it needs consistent reminders that it is still being used. There is also an often overlooked hormonal response. Large muscle engagement influences the release of anabolic hormones that support muscle maintenance and tissue repair. While aging alters hormonal profiles, movement remains one of the most effective natural signals for preserving balance. Even modest daily repetitions can improve circulation of these hormones, supporting recovery and energy levels throughout the day. This is not about building muscle for appearance, but about preserving function at the cellular level. Emotionally, this movement restores a sense of autonomy. Rising from a chair without assistance reinforces trust in the body. That trust influences how men approach other movements, from climbing stairs to lifting groceries. Fear decreases when capability is proven repeatedly. Neuroscience shows that confidence is reinforced through successful physical experiences, which reshape neural circuits associated with movement planning and risk assessment. Each controlled repetition becomes evidence that the body is still dependable. Importantly, this exercise respects the aging joint. Using a chair for support allows depth and range to be adjusted based on comfort. The knees are protected by distributing load through the hips, while the spine remains aligned. This encourages joint lubrication through movement, increasing the flow of synovial fluid that nourishes cartilage. Stiff joints are often not damaged joints, but underused ones. Gentle repetition restores mobility without inflammation. Over time, the sit-to-stand practice reshapes daily life. Getting out of a car becomes easier. Rising from bed requires less effort. Fatigue diminishes because movements require less energy when performed efficiently. The body adapts to what it repeatedly experiences, and when it experiences calm, controlled strength each day, it reorganizes itself accordingly. Aging, in this context, becomes less about decline and more about intelligent conservation, where strength is maintained not through force, but through respect for how the body learns and responds. Breathing is often overlooked because it feels automatic. Yet it is one of the few bodily functions that sits at the intersection of conscious control and involuntary regulation. For men over 60, this makes controlled breathing combined with gentle arm elevation a uniquely powerful exercise, not for muscles alone, but for the internal systems that quietly govern health. As the arms rise and fall in coordination with the breath, the body begins to synchronize multiple physiological rhythms that tend to drift apart with age. The lungs, heart, diaphragm, and nervous system start communicating in a more coherent pattern, restoring balance that is difficult to achieve through strength training alone. From a scientific standpoint, slow, deep breathing directly influences the autonomic nervous system. Aging often shifts this system toward a state of chronic alertness, even in the absence of danger. Elevated stress hormones persist quietly, raising blood pressure, stiffening blood vessels, and accelerating muscle loss. When breathing slows and deepens, particularly through the nose, it stimulates the vagus nerve, a major communication pathway between the brain and internal organs. This nerve acts as a biological brake, lowering heart rate, calming inflammatory responses, and improving digestion and immune function. Gentle arm movement enhances this effect by engaging sensory receptors in the shoulders and upper chest, amplifying feedback to the brain. Arm elevation also influences circulation in subtle but important ways. As the arms lift, the rib cage expands, allowing the lungs to fill more completely. This increases oxygen exchange while reducing shallow breathing patterns that often dominate later in life. Improved oxygenation supports brain function, muscle endurance, and cellular repair. At the same time, rhythmic arm movement assists lymphatic flow, which relies on muscle contraction rather than a central pump. This helps reduce fluid stagnation and supports immune surveillance, an often neglected aspect of aging health. The diaphragm plays a central role in this practice. With age, diaphragmatic movement can become restricted due to posture changes, stress, or inactivity. Coordinating breath with arm elevation encourages the diaphragm to descend fully, massaging internal organs and improving venous return to the heart. This gentle internal pressure change supports cardiovascular efficiency without strain. Over time, it can contribute to more stable blood pressure and improved exercise tolerance, even in men who consider themselves unfit. Neurologically, this exercise trains interoception, the brain's ability to sense internal bodily states. As breathing becomes more controlled and movement more deliberate, the brain receives clearer signals about heart rhythm, lung expansion, and muscle tension. This improves emotional regulation and reduces anxiety, which often manifests physically as tension, poor sleep, or fatigue. Scientific studies in neuroplasticity show that improved interoceptive awareness enhances decision-making, resilience, and overall sense of well-being. The body becomes less reactive and more responsive. There is also a postural benefit that unfolds gradually. Raising the arms with control encourages spinal extension and shoulder mobility, counteracting the forward collapse posture common with aging. This opens the chest and reduces compression on the lungs and heart. When posture improves, breathing naturally deepens, creating a positive feedback loop. The body learns that upright alignment is not effortful, but efficient. Muscles that were chronically tight begin to relax, while underused stabilizers gently awaken. Perhaps most importantly, this practice redefines exercise for the aging body. It shifts the focus from external appearance to internal harmony. Men often associate exercise with exertion, sweating, and strain. This breathing-centered movement teaches that health can also be cultivated through calm repetition and attention. The nervous system responds first, and the physical benefits follow. Energy becomes more stable throughout the day, sleep quality improves, and recovery from minor stresses accelerates. Over time, this daily ritual becomes a form of internal maintenance. The heart beats with greater variability, a marker of resilience. The breath deepens without conscious effort. The body operates with less friction, as if its internal gears have been oiled. Aging does not slow these systems by default, neglect does. When breathing and movement are reunited in a simple, intentional way, the body remembers how to regulate itself, drawing strength not from force, but from alignment with its own biological rhythms. Consistency is one of the most underestimated forces in human biology, especially as men move beyond 60. The body is not designed to respond dramatically to occasional effort, but to adapt quietly to repeated signals. When movement appears daily in gentle, predictable forms, the nervous system begins to trust it. This trust alters how muscles activate, how joints move, and how energy is distributed throughout the body. From a scientific perspective, consistency shapes adaptation more reliably than intensity, because the aging body prioritizes safety and efficiency over novelty. Every biological system operates on expectation. Muscles maintain strength not simply because they are capable, but because they are regularly asked to participate. When days pass without movement, the body interprets inactivity as instruction. Muscle fibers shrink, neural connections weaken, and circulation becomes less responsive. Daily repetition reverses this message. Even low-intensity exercises, when performed consistently, preserve motor units and maintain communication between brain and muscle. The brain reinforces pathways that are used often, pruning those that are ignored. This process, known as neural economy, explains why small daily practices outperform sporadic intense workouts for long-term function. Joint health responds in a similar way. Joints depend on movement to distribute synovial fluid, which nourishes cartilage and reduces friction. Without daily motion, this fluid stagnates, leading to stiffness that many mistake for irreversible damage. Consistent movement restores lubrication and maintains joint range without inflammation. The body does not need forceful stretching to remain mobile, it needs regular reminders that movement is part of daily life. Over time, stiffness gives way to ease, not because joints are repaired overnight, but because they are kept alive through motion. The cardiovascular system also thrives on predictability. Sudden bursts of exertion can challenge an aging heart, while steady daily movement improves vascular elasticity and blood flow efficiency. Gentle repetition encourages capillaries to remain open and responsive, supporting oxygen delivery to tissues. Mitochondria, the energy-producing centers within cells, respond particularly well to consistency. Regular movement signals the body to maintain these structures, improving endurance and reducing fatigue. Energy becomes more stable throughout the day because the body no longer shifts between extremes of inactivity and exertion. Hormonal balance is another quiet beneficiary of daily practice. Stress hormones are designed to rise and fall in response to immediate challenges. When movement is irregular, these hormones remain elevated, contributing to inflammation and muscle loss. Consistent physical activity provides a controlled outlet for stress, lowering baseline cortisol levels. This supports anabolic processes that preserve muscle and bone. Over time, the internal environment becomes more favorable for repair and maintenance, even in the absence of intense training. There is also a psychological adaptation that mirrors the physical one. When movement becomes part of daily routine, resistance diminishes. The brain no longer debates whether to exercise, it expects it. This reduces mental fatigue and decision-making strain. Neuroscience shows that habits formed through repetition require less cognitive effort, freeing mental resources for other tasks. Men who move daily often report increased confidence and clarity, not because they push harder, but because their bodies feel dependable again. Fear plays a subtle role in aging movement patterns. Inconsistency breeds uncertainty. When the body is not used regularly, movements feel risky, leading to hesitation and stiffness. Consistent practice restores familiarity. The nervous system learns what to expect, reducing protective tension that restricts motion. Balance improves because the brain trusts the body's responses. Confidence grows organically through repeated successful experiences, reinforcing a positive feedback loop between mind and movement. Perhaps most importantly, consistency reframes aging itself. Instead of viewing the body as something that inevitably declines, daily practice reveals adaptability. The body responds not to youth, but to information. When it receives clear, repeated signals of movement, balance, and breath, it organizes itself accordingly. Strength becomes quieter, endurance steadier, and recovery faster. Aging, in this light, becomes a process of refinement rather than loss, guided by the simple principle that what the body experiences every day is what it becomes prepared to sustain. There is a transformation that occurs when the body begins to respond reliably again, and it is not always visible from the outside. For men over 60, this shift often begins as a subtle return of trust. Standing up feels stable rather than uncertain. Walking no longer requires constant attention to balance. Breathing settles into a deeper rhythm without conscious effort. These experiences are not merely physical improvements, they reshape how the brain interprets the body's capabilities. Neuroscience shows that confidence is not an abstract belief, but a learned biological response reinforced through repeated successful movement. Function becomes the new measure of vitality. Instead of focusing on appearance or comparison, the body is judged by what it can do with ease. This reframing alters motivation in powerful ways. When movements feel natural and reliable, men are more likely to stay active without forcing discipline. The brain rewards functional success with dopamine, reinforcing behaviors that preserve mobility and independence. Over time, daily movement becomes associated with comfort rather than effort, which strengthens adherence far more effectively than willpower alone. At the neural level, repeated functional movement reshapes motor maps in the brain. These maps determine how efficiently muscles are activated and coordinated. With age and inactivity, they become blurred, leading to delayed reactions and compensatory patterns that increase strain. When movement is practiced daily with awareness, these maps sharpen. Signals travel with greater precision, reducing unnecessary muscle tension. This efficiency conserves energy and reduces fatigue, allowing men to move through daily tasks with less effort. The body does not become stronger by force, but by clarity of communication. Emotionally, this clarity has profound effects. Anxiety about movement often fades when the body proves itself capable again. Fear of falling, which can subtly restrict posture and gait, diminishes as balance improves. The nervous system learns that stability is the norm rather than the exception. This learning alters stress responses beyond movement. Heart rate variability improves, sleep deepens, and emotional resilience increases. The body becomes better at returning to baseline after stress, a key marker of healthy aging. There is also a quiet restoration of identity. Many men unconsciously associate aging with loss of usefulness. When physical function declines, it can feel like a personal failure rather than a biological process. Regaining ease of movement challenges that narrative. Carrying groceries, climbing stairs, or standing for longer periods becomes evidence of continued capability. These experiences reinforce self-respect and autonomy. Psychological research consistently shows that perceived competence is closely linked to mental well-being, particularly in later life. The relationship between body and mind becomes more cooperative. Instead of negotiating every movement, the brain trusts the body to respond appropriately. This trust reduces cognitive load, freeing attention for engagement with the world rather than self-monitoring. Movements become fluid again, not because the body is young, but because it is well trained for its current stage of life. The nervous system values predictability and reliability, and daily functional practice provides both. Social engagement often improves as a result. When movement feels easier, participation increases. Men are more likely to walk, travel, or engage in shared activities without fear of limitation. This has cascading health benefits, as social interaction is strongly linked to longevity and cognitive preservation. The body supports connection when it functions smoothly, reinforcing the idea that physical health and emotional health are inseparable. Over time, these changes accumulate into a deep sense of steadiness. Confidence emerges not as bravado, but as calm assurance. The body responds when asked. Recovery follows effort without lingering strain. This state reflects neuroplasticity at work, the brain's capacity to adapt at any age. Function becomes feedback, informing the mind that it is safe to move, explore, and participate. Aging, in this context, is no longer defined by what has been lost, but by what continues to work well when nurtured with consistency and respect.